Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to the Modern Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dennis Tian, MD, MPH of Beth Israel Lahey Performance Network. We have a great episode for this month's episode planned for you. We are going to talk a lot about vaccines and COVID vaccines. We have an awesome guest, Dr. Paul Offit, who is an internationally recognized expert in the fields of virology, immunology, and vaccination. And then we're going to go through our usual routine, Dave. We got some great stuff in the news. We've got some great non-medicine topics of the week to get to. I think you're going to like them. And then we have, of course, the Boston Sports Minute. So, Producer Dave, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining me, as always.
My pleasure. Doing great. You know, I wonder if the Sports Minute will have something to do with the Patriots, because here in New England we're back, baby. We're all excited about the Pats.
We're all excited, and I have been told that Dr. Offit is a big Philadelphia Eagles fan, so I feel like we have to acknowledge that, because I see him waiting there, and I'm sure he's. It seems like the Eagles are going through their annual existential crisis, so maybe we'll touch on that when we get him in there. But I think we're going to start off with our guest. Without further ado, we're very lucky and fortunate to have Dr. Paul Offit. He's an American pediatrician. He specializes in infectious diseases, vaccines, immunology, and virology. And he really is a worldwide renowned expert in some of these issues. And, you know, what we do on this show, what we try to do on the show, is we try to give people good information, because we live in a culture of misinformation. We are in a time of misinformation, and we're in a time where doctors and medicine and science is being questioned like it never has before. And the point of this podcast is to give the consumer some insight so that they can navigate the world of information that we live in. And we really couldn't possibly have a better guest to help us do that around this issue with the COVID vaccine. It's mid-October when we're recording this. A lot of people are confused about what to do. So we're going to get into the COVID vaccine. We're going to get into vaccines in general. And we're going to talk a little bit about a paper. I don't even want to say it's a paper. It was a letter to the editor last week that linked COVID vaccines and cancer. And I had a lot of concerns about that, because it was really misleading and frankly dangerous, that paper, that data. So we're going to get into that a little bit later too. But without further ado, introduce our guest, Dr. Paul Offit. Dr. Offit, welcome to the Modern Medicine Podcast.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And go Birds.
Dr. Offit is a huge Eagles fan. So yes, go Birds. Okay. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is, you know, as I said, it's mid-October, and a lot of Americans are having to make decisions about COVID vaccination for this year. And there are a lot of people that are very vocal that are just never going to get a COVID shot again. And that, though, we're not going to reach, I don't think, some of those people. But there are a lot of people in the middle, in my opinion, that are just really like confused about what to do, that see conflicting information and don't really know what the right thing for them is. So for your patients and for people that come to you, what are you recommending for people who should get a COVID shot this year?
So I think any young child who has neither been naturally infected or vaccinated benefits from a COVID vaccine. So you should have a primary COVID vaccine if you've never been vaccinated. Otherwise, in terms of a yearly COVID vaccine, I think we should do what, frankly, all other countries in this world do, which is target high-risk groups, meaning people who are over 75, women who are pregnant, people who are immune compromised, or people who have certain chronic medical conditions like chronic lung disease, chronic heart disease, because the goal of this vaccine is to keep people out of the hospital, out of the intensive care unit, out of the morgue. So the question then is who's getting hospitalized and who's dying? And it's really those high-risk groups. So I think what we had done in this country is we had, up until really now, recommended that everybody over 6 months of age get a yearly booster dose, which made us unusual among other countries. So I think that's it. If you're at a high-risk group, you should get a yearly vaccine. Otherwise, as long as you've been either previously vaccinated or naturally infected, I don't think you need a yearly vaccine.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's actually what I've been recommending to my patients when they come to me. And look, I don't think that if like a healthy adult wants to get a COVID shot, I don't tell them not to. Like, I mean, go for it. If you understand the risks and benefits and it's what you want to do, I mean, by all means, go for it. I don't think it's going to harm them, likely, certainly. But, focusing on those high-risk groups, I think really is the correct way to approach this going into this year. Let's talk a little bit about some of the confusion around the COVID vaccine. And I have this sort of idea, Dr. Offit, that in really the history of science and medicine, there's so much skepticism around COVID vaccination, right? And I'm not sure there has ever been a medical intervention that has been as scrutinized or studied as the COVID vaccine has. I mean, you look there, and you know this, there have been so many papers all around the world, right? Different organizations, different countries that are looking at the safety of the COVID vaccine. Do you agree with me that before we even get into a discussion about what that safety is, that the COVID vaccine has been the most studied medical intervention probably in the history of medicine?
Without question. I mean, it's been given to billions of people at a time when we have the kind of surveillance systems in place, like the Vaccine Safety Data Link, to look very carefully at what the problem is, whether there's a problem. So, I mean, I was on the FDA Vaccine Advisory Committee in December 2020 when those two vaccines, the Pfizer and Moderna mRNA vaccines, came up for our recommendation for authorization or not. And at that time, you had a 40,000 person prospective placebo-controlled trial for Pfizer. For Moderna, you had a 30,000 person trial, again, prospective placebo-controlled. So at that point, only 35,000 people by December of 2020, adults in the United States, had been vaccinated with these two mRNA vaccines. And you were about to make a recommendation to authorize or not authorize those vaccines for what's going to be hundreds and hundreds of millions of people. You know the other shoe was going to drop. You know you were going to find some rare problem that you didn't see when you're only looking at tens of thousands of people, when you then look at hundreds of millions of people. And that's what happened. You saw for the mRNA vaccines, there was a rare, roughly 1 per 50,000 people could get myocarditis, meaning inflammation of the heart muscle, which was for the most part short-lived, transient, and self-resolving. I mean, not like the myocarditis that you saw with the infection, because that's what we saw in our hospital, at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. We saw the so-called multi-system inflammatory disease, where children would get COVID, they would get better, and then they would come in with inflammation of the liver, inflammation of pneumonia and myocarditis, which would get them to the ICU. This was severe myocarditis and occasionally fatal myocarditis. So I think in general, it was, as although you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, this was not as bad as one feared. Because for example, in the last 3 years in this country, we really haven't seen myocarditis as a consequence of that fact. So I think it was a remarkably safe and remarkably effective vaccine.
Yeah, and it's like we've talked on the podcast several times about how no one ever said vaccination is without risk. The risks are extremely, extremely small. But this idea that somehow because there is a small risk to vaccination, that means you shouldn't do it. I mean, there's risk to being on this planet, right? This is a dirty planet. It's filled with germs that have evolved over millions of years to try and make people sick and to kill them, frankly. And I think a lot about like why people get so wrapped up in this idea that because something has a small risk to it, they shouldn't do it, and how it like ties into some of our like larger cultural trends and thinking. And the reality is 100 years ago, people only lived to be 32 years old, right? So we must be doing some things right. Like we talk about big pharma and vaccines and, all medicine and all this stuff. And there's so much skepticism about it now. We must be doing something right because we're living like 2.5 times longer than we used to.
Right. No, we live longer, better lives because of science and technology in an age when people not only don't necessarily understand science and technology, but are perfectly willing to reject it.
Absolutely. So this really ties in well to this paper that came out, not a paper, I keep calling it a paper, and I really don't even want to do it the justice of calling it a paper, but this data that went all over social media from about a week and a half ago, linking COVID vaccination with cancer. And I'm assuming you've seen that letter to the editor, Dr. Offit. And from the get-go, I had major concerns about this letter and this data, and that's why I invited you on the podcast. But before we even get into what my concerns were with the data presented, my bigger problem with this whole thing is that I think it's disgustingly unprofessional to release data like that without a full publication, because there is a process of review, of peer review, and of review by the scientific community at large that ultimately allows us to assess the validity of associations observed when we present data. And the reality is we can't properly do that in this case because we got a very incomplete picture of the data from the fact that it was not a full publication. So my first concern is, and I'm wondering if you agree with me, is I think it's super dangerous and unprofessional to even release information like this without having a full publication behind it.
I agree. I mean, we're living in an age when there's
lost him.
You lost me?
We got you back. Sorry.
We're living in an age where billions of journal articles are published every year, millions and millions. And they follow a bell-shaped curve. Some are great, some are awful, most are more or less mediocre. But that kind of paper, which is trying to say that a correlation in time is causation, that one is causing the other. If you're going to do that, you better make sure that you control for all the kinds of confounding variables that enter a relationship between vaccines and cancer, which is control for healthcare seeking behavior, control for medical background, control for socioeconomic background. Was there an increase in family history of cancer in the group that got vaccinated versus those that didn't? You have to control for all that. And when you don't, you can't say anything. I mean, so for example, in 1991, the birth dose of hepatitis B was introduced in the United States. And so what happened over that decade, as we gave more and more hepatitis B vaccine, the incidence of sudden infant death syndrome dramatically declined. So it was like an inverse relationship. So you could look at that and you could say the hepatitis B vaccine prevented sudden infant death syndrome. But what you would have failed to notice is that also in 1991, the American Academy of Pediatrics launched their Back to Sleep program, meaning children were more likely to have sudden infant death syndrome if they were laid on their stomach as compared to on their back after eating. So that you would need to account for that to understand why it is that the incidence of sudden infant death syndrome decreased. And that's true here too, especially healthcare seeking behavior. You want to make sure that that's the people who choose to get a vaccine and people who choose not to get a vaccine are not necessarily the same group.
Exactly. So what this data showed, in case people are watching the podcast and they haven't seen it, is it looked at a pretty large group of individuals in South Korea. I think it was several million people. And they showed that individuals that had gotten COVID vaccination had higher rates of breast, colon, stomach, liver, cervical, and lung cancer in South Korea. And they were statistically significant associations. However, what goes unsaid, and we don't know because the publication is incomplete, is, the validity of those associations. And that's kind of what you're getting at. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the concerns I have about that association being valid. And the first thing that jumped out at me about this paper, and I think it was a huge limitation, is that it only followed up for 1 year. That's not enough time. We know that most cancers take many years, if not decades, to manifest. So that's your second red flag. The first red flag is it's not a full publication. The second red flag is that it was 1 year of follow-up. That is a major red flag. When you're getting these kinds of associations and you only followed people for 1 year and the disease takes decades to manifest, that should raise your antenna that there's something confounding this data.
And also, first of all, you wonder whether or not people had started to have some evidence that they had cancer already before they got the vaccine.
Right.
They felt that because they were at some greater health risk that they chose to get a vaccine. I mean, that's obviously, but also it would be interesting to know, see, there's a whole variety of different cancers. By what mechanism are they arguing that vaccines cause cancer? I mean, it's an mRNA vaccine that codes for the protein, the spike protein. Are they arguing that the spike protein causes cancer? Or are they arguing that because when you make an mRNA vaccine, you start with double-stranded DNA. You do start with DNA. And so is there residual DNA in the vaccine? Yes, in a very small fragmented form. Are they saying that the DNA is then integrating into your DNA and causing cancer because that would be at least a plausible mechanism. But how is that going to happen? I mean, first of all, foreign DNA, once in the cytoplasm, will be destroyed by innate immune mechanism. Secondly, you have to cross the nuclear membrane, which would require a nuclear access signal that this doesn't have. Thirdly, if you're going to try and integrate into your own DNA, which would be a plausible mechanism for causing cancer, there is no integrase there, so it can't possibly happen. You have a greater chance of becoming Spider-Man if you get these vaccines than I think developing cancer from them.
So what you're saying is that the idea that the mRNA could cause a vaccine could cause cancer in 1 year, based on what we understand about biology, is biologically implausible.
That's right.
And if we remember, when we're trying to tease out the difference between association and causation, one of the big criteria that we use, and that's the Bradford Hill criteria, and we talk about a lot on this podcast, one of those criteria is biologic plausibility. So we don't have a biologically plausible way for an mRNA vaccine to cause cancer like that. Now, the people that are proponents of this are saying about the turbo cancer, and somehow the vaccine can cause a turbo cancer, and that's why 1 year follow-up is sufficient. Well, we don't know for sure if that's not true, because we just never know, right? But we know, based on our understanding of biology, that's completely biologically implausible.
Yes, I agree. And that's why it should have never been published. And I think in a better world, these kinds of studies wouldn't get published, because all they do is scare people, and they're thin at best and irreproducible, certainly, most likely.
Absolutely. And when you put data like this out there, and you're going to influence people are going to see this and they're going to stay away from vaccination, that is going to hurt people's lives. That could potentially lead to people getting sick or dying, right? Based on bad information.
Yes, that's right. That's why it's irresponsible.
My next concern with this paper, and you kind of just hit on this, but I just want to illustrate this point, is the potential for reverse causation. And that's what you just illustrated, right? Like, were people that were sicker, or knew they were sick, or knew they something wrong with them, more likely to get the COVID vaccine? And that's why we observed this association.
Right. Or if you're more likely to get a COVID vaccine, that you're more likely to seek health care. If you chose not to get a vaccine, you may just say, I'm not the kind of person that sees doctors.
Right. 100%. And then the last concern, and this is the biggest one, and I found this really interesting, because when I first saw the data, I didn't know this, but in South Korea, they screen for different kinds of cancer than they do in America. And they screen for cancer, breast, colon, stomach, liver, cervical, and lung, and thyroid and prostate are also commonly screened for. So all the kinds of cancer that they picked up in this association are kinds of cancer that are widely screened for in South Korea. So that should raise your antenna right there, that, there is some kind of confounding bias in this data when it's, we know that people that are more likely to visit doctors are more likely to get diagnosed with cancer in 1 year, and also probably more likely to get the COVID vaccination. That's the definition of a confounder. The cancers they screened for are the cancers they picked up in this association. That's a huge red flag.
And that's why the paper should never be published.
Right. 100%. It's interesting. It should have never been published. And it's part of a larger trend, Paul, which is that, we say this all the time on this podcast, really bad papers get published in really good medical journals pretty much every day in this country.
Yeah, probably no better example of that than Andrew Wakefield's publication in The Lancet of this false concern that the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine caused autism in 1998. The Lancet is one of the oldest, most respected general medical journals. And if you looked at that paper, it was just a case series. I mean, you might as well have published something that said, children who ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches were more likely to develop autism, because it's like, ate the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, within a few months developed symptoms of autism. That's all that paper was. And now 24 studies have been done looking at children who did or didn't get that vaccine to show that there was no relationship between the vaccine and autism. But it's very hard to unring the bell. The minute that you scare people, it's really hard to unscare them.
So we're living in a culture now where there is so much misinformation available. And I want to talk to you a little bit about just general vaccine skepticism independent of COVID, because now this whole thing with COVID has spilled over into general vaccine skepticism. And now you see a lot of parents and patients that are getting off regular vaccine schedules. I was at the barbershop a few weeks ago, and the guy that was cutting my hair, he knows I'm a doctor, and he put me on the phone with his wife and asked me to convince his wife to get his 10-year-old daughter a tetanus shot. And she was concerned about the tetanus shot. And I'm like, a tetanus shot is canon of medicine. Is there even controversy about getting a tetanus shot, like medically? But at the time we live in now, it's just a great example of how people are not following these recommendations anymore because of this sort of culture of skepticism that's developed.
Yeah, no, and I think skepticism is a nice word. I mean, I would argue that, I was on both the Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices to the CDC and the FDA's Vaccine Advisory Committee. I would argue everybody who sat around that table were skeptics. I mean, show us the data, prove that it works, prove that it's safe. This is more like science denialism. Sort of people buy into these false notions that cause them to make bad decisions that put them and their children at risk. It's worse than skepticism.
You're right about that, because I always say I'm a vaccine skeptic too. That's our job as scientists is to be skeptical, but we make decisions in the best interest of our patients. But I think that, if you want to call it science denial, I do think that, if you really think about it, and do you practice pediatrics still currently?
No, I stopped seeing patients about a year ago. I'm for the functional, I trained in pediatrics, did a residency training in pediatrics, did fellowship training in infectious disease, and then basically was a virologist, viral immunologist for 26 years. And I was part of a team at Children's that created the strains that became the rotavirus vaccine, Rototec. So that was really what I did for 26 years.
That's amazing. But I think you would agree with me, and I'm sure you saw this up until you did walk away or move away from clinical medicine a year ago, that the science denialism, the doubting of medical recommendations, the vaccine side gets a lot of the attention for that, but I don't think it's really limited to just vaccines. I feel like, and I've only been in practice for 12 years now or so, but I definitely have seen a real shift in that time where the recommendations that we make about many different things, many different conditions, now face a level of scrutiny and skepticism like they've never faced before, ever at any point, to the point where people routinely make dangerous or self-destructive decisions in my office based strictly on complete and total unwillingness to trust what I might recommend to them.
Yeah, I think we've lost trust. I think that the pandemic really fueled that in many ways, especially the first 2 years of the pandemic. In that first year, we didn't have anything, right? The virus comes into this country, starts killing people in February of 2020. We didn't have monoclonals or antibody or vaccines or antivirals until the end of the year. So what did? We restricted travel, we closed businesses, we shuttered schools, we isolated, quarantined, masked, social distance, and there were people who didn't like that. They saw it as government overreach. The following year, in 2021, we had a vaccine. You couldn't go anywhere without your vaccine card. You could go to your favorite bar, restaurant, sporting event. You may be fired from your job. You couldn't go to your place of worship necessarily, and people hated that. And this is it's sort of turbocharged, if you will, this kind of medical freedom movement, which is I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm my own expert. I'm my own doctor. I can go on the internet and be my own doctor. And I think that's what you're seeing. I think that's what the MAHA movement is. The Make America Healthier movement is, I don't trust the healthcare system. I don't trust doctors, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says. Don't trust the experts. Just trust yourself. That sells these days. And in many ways, I think it's very dangerous. And you're seeing the results of that. We have a measles epidemic in this country that's bigger than anything we've seen in 33 years. We have 3 people dying from measles in this country this year. That's the same number of deaths over the last 25 years. Right. We have the first child death from measles in this country in more than 20 years. We have more influenza deaths in children in this country than we've had since the last pandemic. And similarly for whooping cough, we're seeing whooping cough deaths in states that hadn't seen whooping cough deaths in years. That's the result of making your own choice and choosing not to get a vaccine. That's what that choice is. And I think until enough children suffer and are hospitalized and die, we're going to be living with this until the trend switches in the other direction.
It's beyond vaccine though, because like I'll tell you right now, like I got patients that are walking around. I got one guy who came in a few days ago, and his LDL cholesterol was 220, but he doesn't want to take a statin. Now that's a ticking time bomb from a cardiovascular perspective, right? You know, oh, it's my family history. It's been that way my whole life. Well, actually, sir, that's an argument to you better be on a statin like right away. The longer you walk around with the cholesterol that high, the more likely it is you're going to get burned by it. But it's statins. It's GLP and Ozempic, even though a ton of people want them, there's also a lot of people that are skeptical of it. There's this whole thing about cancer and Ozempic, right? There's literature now, as you know, linking Ozempic use with lower rates of 12 kinds of cancer. I mean, Ozempic might be a treatment for cancer at some point in the near future, but based on some really poorly done studies and a lot of misinformation, people are concerned to take Ozempic because of the cancer risk. These people are like diabetic, ticking time bomb type people that were trying to make decisions in their best interest, protect their heart, help them lose weight, lower their blood sugar, and they don't want to listen because they saw something on social media or the internet that scared them.
Can I ask you a question? The Marty McCarry now, the commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, is trying to now promote hormone replacement therapy again, even though that had been shown to be associated with certain cancers. Right. Do you think that's a bad idea?
I do think it's that whole hormone replacement therapy that happened probably before, right, as I was kind of getting into practice. And so it's not something that I've routinely done. And when we've had patients come and ask me for it, you know, we have these very frank conversations about the risk and the benefits. Some people still do it here and there, but I don't feel comfortable prescribing that for individuals.
Right, makes sense.
You know, it's just, there's a huge downside. I'll tell you, I mean, even you know, I'll be honest with you, even the testosterone thing in men, you know, there's conflicting data on that. I mean, if you look at it now, you know, if you go to a certain doctors or providers, they're going to tell you testosterone is good for your heart. And it might be in some ways, but there is literature that says the opposite. It's very much a question mark. If you know, taking testosterone is good or bad for your cardiovascular health, we don't really know. But a lot of people just, you know, they get on this stuff and they get these doctors that will just give it to them. And, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah, RFK Jr. is a big promoter of testosterone. He just recently came up with data that, you know, like sperm counts in teenagers are much lower than they used to be, and we need to give testosterone. He just makes stuff up.
Yeah, it's scary. It's a really crazy, scary time. Even I'll give you another example, cancer screening. I mean, I have more hard time getting people to go for colonoscopies and stuff and mammograms than ever before. Basic things, you know, that save lives. I mean, I don't know if there's anything we do that is as firmly evidence-based as colon cancer screening, and we still can't get people to do it. It's just a really interesting time to practice medicine, but I think you hit on it. It's the spillover of the political narrative. The political narrative in this country is that everything is broken and it needs to be fixed, and everything is dysfunctional, and the swamp needs to be drained. That's the political side. I'm not taking any stance on that, whatever. But what I will say is that it's spilled over into medicine, and that's not a good thing, you know, because medicine actually isn't really that broken. It's a little broken, but, you know, there's been a lot of good from what we've done too.
Yeah, as you said, we live much longer than we used to. But you're right. I think when you mix, I think the old expression is when you mix science with politics, you get politics.
Yeah. And that's clearly what happened here. Well, listen, I want to thank you for your time. Producer Dave, you have any questions for the good doctor before we let him go?
I just have one question. If things don't work out with Jalen Hurts, is there any chance Randall Cunningham is still available?
I like Tanner McGee, our backup quarterback. I think he's not mobile, but he's an accurate passer.
I spent 4 years in Philly at University of Pennsylvania and went to the vet a few times, but never braved the 700 level. Have you ever been up there, Doctor?
Well, no. so I am a season ticket holder, but I'm in the 300 level, so it's better.
Good for you.
So I went to the link one time in 2012. I think it was 2012, and the Patriots absolutely destroyed the Eagles. And I was there when the Philadelphia fans were chanting "Fire Andy." They wanted Andy Reid gone. And I was in the house for that day. So.
I guess that didn't age well.
It didn't, but they at the same time, the Eagles have won 2 Super Bowls since then. So.
The link looks like a nice stadium. You both have been there, obviously.
Nice.
Let me tell you how old I am. So I went to college at Tufts in Boston, and so
Sure.
when the Colts would come, the Baltimore Colts, because I grew up in Baltimore, when they would come and play, so I would see them play in Foxborough, that stadium, Schaefer Stadium. And then to tell you how old I am, before they were the New England Patriots, they were the Boston Patriots.
Sure.
They played some of their games in Harvard Stadium, and I saw games there.
Harvard, Fenway Park, Nickerson Field. Yeah, they were nomads for a while. My parents had season tickets from the time the old stadium began. I know you're a longtime season ticket holder.
I'm a Patriot season ticket holder for a long time.
Back to the original crappy stadium, the aluminum benches.
Loved that stadium. Loved it.
That was like a high school stadium.
Like a high school stadium. It was all business. So 1 minute, we'll give you 1 minute quickly before we let you go. Are the Philadelphia Eagles going to figure it out this year, Dr. Offit?
I think that this weekend's game against Minnesota will tell everything, because they've had a week and a half off to try and figure out just why they got killed by the New York Giants. And if they can't figure that out, we're in trouble.
Very good. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you, all the work you do. Continue to fight the good fight, getting good information out there, and look forward to doing it again sometime. Thank you, Dr. Offit.
Take care. Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you, too. All right, Producer Dave, Dr. Paul Offit, that was great. Thank you.
Terrific.
That was terrific. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's like you always say on this podcast, let's bust the myths. There's time is no more opportune for us to, dispel a lot of the things people read on Facebook or wherever, right, about the vaccines, about COVID, etc. And it's like good to get the straight dope from Dr. Offit.
100%. And I like, he's very, I thought, measured in what he said. Like, he was very realistic about some of the side effects of the COVID vaccine. He was very modest in his recommendations. He's not someone that's saying everyone should go run and get a COVID vaccine right away. And I agree with that, because that's not what the data says. We've talked about that on the podcast before. But I just found like, that's a scientist, following the data, making recommendations based on the data, not going too far one way or the other because the data doesn't tell him to do that.
That's right. And what did he say? When you mix science and politics, you get a mess or something?
You get politics.
You get politics, great, right. Yeah. Which is sadly something we're seeing right now. We talked about it in the most recent emergency episode we did about autism and Tylenol. Please, people, it's our health. Let's go with what we know and not what other people believe,
I mean, we kind of touched on this with him too, and I've said this before, but just the revisionist history around COVID is just one of the things I will never appreciate. How quickly people forgot, like this is like it was some kind of myth or hoax, and it's like this was a outright disaster. People were dying by the thousands in ICUs by themselves alone for months. It was a terrible, terrible thing. It was a real thing. The things that we did, we had to do. And thankfully, a couple things happened. We got great treatments, we got great vaccines, and then just the natural history of viruses. We all got some immunity, and now we don't have to really worry about it that much unless you're really old or sick. But people really forget what we went through and how dangerous it was, and it's just stunning. It really is.
That's true. We all remember that great period of uncertainty, and yes, like in hindsight, I guess we didn't have to quarantine for a year or 2 years or whatever we did, but we didn't know that, and we had to do the smart things, and it was miserable for a while, but for the most part, people followed the science. Even
the quarantining, that saved a lot of people's lives. I'm sorry.
Sure.
It was, when this first came, it was way deadlier than flu. We had no immunity. No one had immunity to it. So it was just a different animal 5 years ago than it is now, where we all have immunity to it. I've said many times, was COVID really more dangerous and deadly than any other virus? Or was it just that we had absolutely no immunity to it? And I think it was more the latter. Like the things that COVID did virologically are similar to what other viruses do. It's just that none of us, we were totally naive to it as a species, and that's why it was so dangerous.
Well put. The thing we got wrong more than anything else was stocking up on toilet paper.
Oh yeah, and like washing the groceries. And,
yeah, that was
ridiculous. We definitely got some things wrong, but we just didn't. We didn't know. All right, you ready to move to In the News?
Let's do it.
In the news.
All right, in the news, what is going on in the world of medicine? Some of the things that you might have seen on social media. And I do want to say, if anyone has anything that they want me to talk about on this segment, please hit me up on Facebook or our Instagram page, because I would love to do that. But I want to start today with a couple of stories I saw. Number one is yesterday or 2 days ago, this was on CNN. Medicare payments were going to shut down to doctors as part of the government shutdown. So you weren't going to get paid for Medicare patients until they figure this mess out. So the government shutdown spilling into now our medical clinics and the medical services that a lot of people access. Well, now they reversed that as of yesterday, and they are going to continue Medicare payments, but they're not going to continue telehealth payments, which is a kind of a devastating blow, because telehealth is huge for Medicare patients, but very much in doubt, the government shutdown putting very much in doubt the ability of your doctor to get paid.
Potentially catastrophic. Why the nuance with telehealth, I wonder?
I don't know. They've been kind of dangling this telehealth thing. Telehealth was a COVID thing, and it was never covered before COVID, and it should have been. It should have been. And for the last 4 or 5 years now, it's kind of living on a month-to-month or year-to-year basis with Medicare. And now just finally with the shutdown and everything going on, they weren't able to figure out a way to extend it. And so now we're being told we're not going to be able to bill for telehealth services for Medicare patients, which is tough because our seniors, some of them, it's hard to get into the clinic. Yep. If I'll give you a great example. We had a guy that just spent a week in the hospital, and he had a couple unresolved issues from the hospital, like medications. There was confusion. What meds is he supposed to be on? What he isn't? He needed some durable medical equipment, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to come and do a post-hospital discharge visit. That's hard for someone who's like 85 that just got out of a hospital to do. Telehealth is a great way to do that post-hospital visit. Tie up loose ends, get the medications figured out, right? Well, guess what happened? He didn't do his visit. He couldn't come in person, and he's back in the hospital now.
Yeah.
And it cost the system 10 times as much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, once again, politics and medicine don't mix. The government's being shut down purely for political jockeying, and it's just tragic when it affects people's health.
This is about as long, and we've had a few of these like shutdown things. This is probably the longest one as we've had.
Feels
in a while.
like it.
Yeah.
Usually they're a few days. Yeah.
Figure it out in a few days.
Yeah.
But, All right. Next story is this is interesting. This was a few weeks ago, September 24th. Trends in global cancer cases, deaths offer little reassurance. This is on MedPage Today, one of my favorite websites. New cancer cases worldwide are predicted to rise by 61% over the next quarter century, but cancer deaths are expected to increase by 75%, according to the Global Burden of Diseases, Injuries, and Risk Factor study. So cases are going up. Cancer deaths are going up more than cases. It really flies in the face of so much we say on this podcast, because there's so much great treatment and technology now. Why are deaths going up more than cases? It's really hard to figure out. I think it has less to do with actual treatment and more to do with delivery of care, access to care, and sort of that public health side of things.
Sure. Yeah, you would think it's completely counterintuitive. You would think that with every passing year, I mean, I just presume you know better than I, but that the cancer research marches on and has always marched on, and we'll keep going until we find a cure, right?
100%. Yeah. But like this is and we are living in a time where we have treatments for cancer we've never had before. Right. People are doing better if they have access to those treatments. But I think one of the things the study commented on was that a lot of this is going to play out in low and middle income countries. This is a global study, not just a U.S. study. And, as people live longer globally, obviously that's a good thing that they're going to live long enough to get cancer. A lot of people wouldn't have even made it that far a century ago. So that's a good thing. But then we're really struggling still to get these treatments that we might have access to in this country globally. And that's really why the deaths are going up so much.
Is it possible that what we're putting in our bodies, particularly in this country, could sadly contribute to increased numbers of cancers, obesity?
Well, I'm glad you hit on that, because the authors in the paper also commented on that. Behavioral risk factors, this is their language, were the greatest contributor to risk attributable cancer deaths globally in 2023. So this is things like smoking, occupational, environmental, and metabolic risk categories. Smoking was the leading risk factor for risk attributable cancer. Other typical things. How about this? Air pollution is a big one, right? Unhealthy diet, alcohol use, occupational risk, tobacco use, and then obesity and high blood sugar. So these are things that are causing us to have more cancers, for sure.
Yeah, and with everything we learn about nutrition and health and all that, it's just sad that you can still get a 5,000 ounce cup of soda from 7-Eleven and people still do it.
Yeah, and it's like to give you an analogy, it's like, look, our cars have never been safer, but more people are dying in cars than ever before. Why? Because of cell phones, because of speeding, because of drunk driving, and all that stuff. It's the same thing with this. We have better technology to treat cancer, better medications than ever before, but yet more people are going to die from cancer. Why? Because the behavioral stuff, and then the inability to get those treatments to where they need to be.
Yeah, it's chilling. I mean, we talked last time we were here. We talked about the, why autism cases are going up. Plenty of theories. The one that I think will ultimately merit more attention are just environmental things and things like we're talking about. Things that we're doing to the air, things that we're putting in our foods. The processed foods and Mountain Dew Code Reds and things like that.
Right.
Eventually, maybe some of these things are going to chicken's going to come home to roost when it comes to our health.
Exactly. And look, this is the one thing that RFK Jr. is right about, which is this whole environmental exposure thing and how it's affecting health and what it's doing to kids and what we're putting in the food and all the sugar and how that's affecting our insulin and our physiology. I mean, that is the one thing that RFK Jr. absolutely has right. There are health consequences, and we're dealing with that in a major way in this country.
Mediterranean diet, people, come on.
Yeah.
If you listen to this podcast,
Oh yeah, we're all Mediterranean diet. That's huge proponent of the Mediterranean diet, but it is so. I mean, to eat a Mediterranean diet in this country, you have to stand on your head and also spend a lot of money. Yeah. And that's the whole problem. The food we eat, most people eat, is just so far away from that, and that's where we're running into a lot of the problems too. All right, let's talk. I want to talk next story. Quest Diagnostics to offer FDA-cleared blood tests for Alzheimer's disease. This is a story, it's a little old, it's from July, but it came to mind because a couple of the sales reps from Quest came to my office a few weeks ago and brought me lunch and pitched this to me. And what this is basically a blood test. It's a combination blood test, and it looks for the byproducts of two separate proteins in your body. It combines, there's several of these blood tests now that are approved for the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. And this Quest product combines two of them into one panel, if you will, and they found it to be highly accurate in its ability to diagnose Alzheimer's disease. The positive predictive value is 90%, meaning if you have a positive test, 90% chance you have Alzheimer's. The negative predictive value is 99%, meaning if you have a negative test, 99% chance you don't have Alzheimer's disease. So for people over 50, that are showing signs of mild cognitive issues, this test can really help distinguish whether it's just, a little bit aging, maybe a little bit ADHD, depression, stress, whatever, or if there's something really going on dementia-wise.
Interesting. Well, I just turned 57 recently, and me and all my peers, we definitely have cognitive issues. I don't want to make light of it, but this is the age when you start forgetting stuff.
Right.
And so, but if there's no downside to this test, well, I'm just thinking, like, I had just a friend who's, sadly, I was just at his dad's funeral. His dad led a long life, but those last 12 years, he had Alzheimer's. And I'm thinking, certainly for my buddy, he's probably already thought of it. I mean, come on. But if he could be genetically predisposed to Alzheimer's, just get the test.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, most Alzheimer's is probably not genetic. There might be a genetic component or predisposition to it, but it really is a lifestyle environmental disease. I think is what we're learning more than. I mean, there are certain subsets of Alzheimer's that might be genetic. These probably are people that have like Alzheimer's onset at a really young age.
Right.
That's more likely to be like a true genetic Alzheimer's. Okay. But for most people, it's going to be an environmental thing, and it ties into all the usual stuff we talk about, right? All the stuff we were just talking about, all the lifestyle stuff. Those are your risk factors. But this test can diagnose. So like for everyone that's having some cognitive issue, which is very common when you get past 50, right? The mild stuff. I forgot this. I forgot that, right? Who can we tease out that actually has a real problem developing? This test will do that. There's all kinds of ethical considerations that come up with this, for sure.
Why is that?
Oh, do you want to know?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Do you want to know? What if your kids want to know?
Right.
What if your spouse wants to know?
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
And you could be highly functional and fine and get a positive result. And okay, 10 years from now, you got a problem. I mean, the thing I will say is that different than before. And if you remember our episode with Dr. Napoli, the first episode we recorded, we have treatments now for Alzheimer's, like real legitimate treatments that can really change the natural history of the disease.
Right.
We didn't have those 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So there probably is some value in knowing who has Alzheimer's.
I think I would want to know. I think because when people get diagnosed with Alzheimer's, you of course know better than me. It's not exactly a wonderful process. I mean, I think there's you start to see some things and they slip and this, and then, God forbid, maybe they forget something important, or God forbid, space out when they're driving or something like that. You'd be, prepared. Now, I guess obviously you don't know exactly when it's going to hit you, but at least you know what's going on, and what's the therapy plan?
Definitely. Yeah. And the treatments we have, which are all new in the last couple of years, and I mean like literally the last 2 years, they work better the earlier they're started. That's one thing we think we know. So like that's the value. You diagnose someone, you treat them early, and maybe you can radically change what happens to them 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
Yeah.
And who knows what's coming? This is just the first wave of these treatments. There's going to be other ones that are probably even more effective. Mm-hmm. So that's the value in it, but it does raise ethical consideration. Like you really want to know.
No, for sure, and it's admittedly it would be. Although again, I said I think I would want to know. It would be a chilling life to live with that hanging in the back of your head. That one day my mind is just going to drift away from me.
Yeah. Exactly. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, as they say. Right. But we can do something about it now. So maybe argue against it. But you can see both sides of it, I think is the point. Yeah. Okay. Next one, and this is sort of in line just with the whole dementia thing, but I thought this was really interesting. Study sheds light on links between sweetened drinks and dementia. So this was I
told you, Mountain Dew Code Red.
Okay. No. Yeah, right. So this was, no, I'm sorry. We talked about this last time. My apologies. This is the wrong study. Okay. What I wanted to do was actually study that sheds light on the relationship between alcohol and dementia. Mm-hmm. Okay. So there was a study published last week, basically looking at alcohol use and dementia, and what they found, contrary to some previous stuff, contrary to some misinformation that out there, is that there is no safe level of alcohol, okay, that every level of alcohol consumption leads to an increase in dementia risk.
Okay. And is it a straight line relationship? I mean, do we know this?
There was a dose response relationship. Mm-hmm. So this was a study that even people that drank relatively small amounts, okay, and this was the conclusions of the authors. The findings provide evidence for a relationship between all types of alcohol use and increased dementia risk. correlational observational data suggested a protective effect of light drinking. This is attributable to reduced drinking seen in early dementia, and that any level of alcohol consumption may contribute to dementia risk. So very interesting, because we were telling people not long ago, have a glass of wine, it's good for your brain.
Right. And although I think it's for people like me that, I like to have a drink at the end of the day. I don't think I'd ever be like, well, I got to go cold turkey. I mean, just knowing me, unless there's some immediate, threat to myself, I'm probably not going to. But it'll make me think twice before having a second, third one, or whatever.
Well, exactly.
So,
and I think, look, the risks are very nominal. It seems like at low levels. Like if you're someone that has a drink or two a day, a couple days a week, I wouldn't worry about it.
Right.
I really wouldn't. But if you're drinking heavily, drinking daily, then yeah, this is something that is going to really increase your risk of dementia. I mean, everything increases your risk of something. We don't live in bubble wrap, right? It's just not going to happen. We're not going to all live to be 100. That's reality. So, you got to do the things that you want to do and you like. And if you like going out and having a drink with your friends or socially, a couple times a week having a drink, I mean, do it. It's totally fine. The risk is nominal. You could look at anything you do and say this could increase the risk of this, that, or the other thing. But what I will say, the take home from this to me is that if you're drinking heavily, the risk is going to really start to pile up pretty quickly.
Yeah. It's all those studies that people will latch on to things they want to hear. And over the years, there have been intermittent sort of studies that at least hint at the fact that, yes, like a drink a day might be okay. I remember one theory that the Europeans, certain parts of Europe, they live longer than us. Their heart health is better than us, despite the fact that a lot of them drink a lot of wine. And I always thought that was probably because we're just more stressed here in America than they are in Europe. It's not necessarily the booze. Yeah,
I mean, I will say, like, the other take home from this is there is no protective effect of alcohol. And it's not good for anything. Like, it's just like anything else. You choose to do it in moderation, live with the small risk. That's your choice, right? But don't go around and kid yourself that it's good for you. It's not good for you, you know?
You know what Homer Simpson would say? Alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of our problems.
That's right.
But don't listen to Homer.
Yeah, that is in the Bear Baron episode, I believe, which might make my top 10.
Nice.
Okay, last one, and I just got to bring this one up because I continue to be amazed at the Ozempic revolution. Study finds unexpected Ozempic Zepbound benefits for psoriasis. So psoriasis is a autoimmune skin disease. It often leads to many manifestations in joints and other parts of the body related to chronic inflammation. And it really causes a pro-inflammatory state throughout the body. And for this reason, individuals with psoriasis do tend to have higher risk of things like heart attacks and strokes. It looks like Ozempic and Zepbound has a significant a protective effect. Psoriasis patients taking GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic or Zepbound had a 78% lower risk of premature death and a 44% lower risk of heart attack, stroke, or other heart-related crisis. Researchers reported at a meeting of the European Academy of Dermatology in Paris. So, skin disease. What does that have to do with Ozempic, right? But it seems like there is this underlying thing of inflammation. And inflammation and insulin resistance, which I think is the holy grail of health. I really do, which is why I keep bringing these stories up, because these drugs, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, Wegovy, they treat insulin resistance. And how insulin resistance kind of creates a pro-inflammatory state in our body and then leads to all kinds of health problems, strokes, heart attacks, probably autoimmune stuff, cancers, whatever, I think is the holy grail, uncharted waters of our health.
Yeah. And so, although, I mean, this isn't necessarily that surprising, because isn't there a history of people discovering drugs for one, or creating drugs for one purpose and finding out it ends up helping in different ways? Because there's still a lot we don't know about the human body, right?
100%. There is a lot we don't know about the human body, but we, I think that we're learning that, insulin resistance is kind of a big part of a lot of the things we think are part of disease and aging. And that's why, we're giving these drugs to so many people with so many problems. And lo and behold, we're seeing all these positive results, it's because of their ability to mitigate inflammation caused by insulin resistance. That's my opinion, and maybe that'll prove me wrong in time, but that would be how I explain why we see these drugs have benefit in so many different conditions. Great medicines. Okay. Anything else you want to bring up, Producer Dave? Or can we move on to the non-medicine topic of the week? Best part of the show.
Let's do it.
Best part of the show.
The doc is off the clock, so it's time for the non-medical topic of the week.
All right. This is a good one. I got two today we're going to talk about. Number one, I saw this article on Yahoo Finance. Younger Americans are flocking to Costco, Sam's Club for groceries. Is buying in bulk the key to high food costs? It seems like more and more Americans are buying their food at Costco, BJ's, and Sam's Club. David, what is your take on Costco, BJ's, and Sam's Club? Do you go to these places?
I feel like for some reason I get on kicks where I'll start to go, maybe a couple times a month. Sometimes you kind of only need to go once a month because the things you're buying are so huge. But I guess I'm pro. If you shop smart there, you can find some good stuff. Surprisingly, it's good for a lot of electronics. You can go in there and I've bought TVs at Costco pretty consistently. And by the way, folks, you'd be amazed how cheap TVs are these days. You can go in and get a huge TV for like, $300, $400. Anyway, so generally I'm pro. There's always a seduction with the wholesale clubs that, oh my God, if I buy this thing of cereal, think of how much money I'll save. I mean, it's $175 worth of cereal, but it'll last me like 5 years. And then it ends up sitting in the back of your closet.
Exactly. Okay. I hate these places. I think these are the biggest scam perpetrated on the American people. You're not going to get rich because you save like 30 cents on cereal at Costco. So you go in there and there's 10 million people in there. You have to wait 40 minutes in line to get out of there. They got the big bulk size containers. You're schlepping out of there.
Yes.
I literally can't stand those places. I'm not going to get rich from shopping there. I have to take the L. And give me the regular grocery store any day over Costco.
Fair enough.
Or any
Sometimes it's good with kids because the kids love the samples.
Samples are a pro. I will concede that.
And you can get them, a huge hot dog and a soda for $1.75.
And then we're talking about lifestyle-related illness. And here we're talking about hot dogs and soda.
Kids can have a hot dog now and again,
My father loves Costco. He's up there, he goes every morning. He hits up the samples. He's he walks. He's known up there.
He's the mayor of Costco.
I could not be bothered with that place. I just can't do it. Can't do it.
Fair
not
enough.
Worth it to me. All right. And now next study, next topic. Okay. We got to talk a little bit about 3-1 Atlas. Mysterious interstellar object racing towards through our solar system, baffling scientists with its speed and origin. Dave, what are your thoughts on 3-1 Atlas?
I'm not up on 3-1 Atlas, but is this what's the actual sighting? Where did it come from?
This is an intergalactic object. It's the third intergalactic object ever spotted.
Right.
And it's moving fast through our solar system, and I think it's going to pass near Earth in early December. And there's no risk it's going to hit Earth or anything like that. But why this object has gotten so much run is because an astrophysicist from Harvard, Avi Loeb, recently posted a paper. Is this 3-1 Atlas alien technology? He did this a few years ago with another thing, by the way. Remember the Oumuamua, the rock or whatever? I don't know. Do you pay attention to this stuff?
A little bit.
It looks like you don't. But my news feed is blowing up with all these videos about how this stupid comet is actually really an interstellar probe.
Well, I like this stuff. I used to produce a podcast called Monsterland, which was all about the paranormal, and you'd be amazed how many people listen to that podcast because there are lots of people. There's stuff we don't know. We admit this. I am fascinated by this. I'm fascinated by, for example, we talk a lot on this podcast about science. Let's deal in stuff we can prove, but we also have to acknowledge, and Neil deGrasse Tyson would tell you, there are things that we don't know and we can't prove, and thus, it's okay to speculate on theories. Neil deGrasse Tyson says there's a fair, legitimate chance that we're living in a computer simulation. Well, that sounds like a completely insane notion. So thus, And yes, I'm with the people that say it'd be really narcissistic for say planet Earth has the only life in the galaxy, in the universe. That's crazy, right?
Yeah. I mean,
I want to know, but I feel like every time this happens, we get like a little taste of it. And we don't get to know enough.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised if somehow like aliens were walking among us here on Earth, right? Like, that wouldn't surprise me one bit. Or if there were like, I do believe in like the Star Trek theory thing, like, which is like, you know, in Star Trek, you can never disrupt the planet because you have to leave it as is. And I wonder if aliens probably look at us like a bunch of cavemen and they just leave us alone and try to keep us from blowing ourselves up. You know, maybe they like, you know, sabotage some atomic bomb at some point or so. I don't know. Or get, you know, he taught us how to fly or so. You know, I don't.
Those are the aliens on The Simpsons, Kangor and Kodos or whatever their name is. They're always looking down, going, "Stupid Earthlings."
100%. But I think that's how they look at us. I don't think this probe. I don't think this comet is anything more than a comet. It's just like sensationalism and social media run amok. And I've got so many videos like blowing up.
Well, we had the Tic Tac. They called it the Tic Tac UFO. This is probably about 4 years ago, but there's a great clip of video from these pilots, and the pilots who are, you know, they're not saying anything scripted. This is in the moment. They're kind of like, "What is that?" Then they're like, "I have no idea what that is." Like,
and the old Israeli the defense secretary before he died said some stuff about, like, you know, I don't know if you ever saw that video about the base on the backside of Mars and stuff like that. So like, hey, there's a lot of smoke out there. Like, I'm not down on aliens as being a possibility, but I just think this particular thing, it's just so sensationalized. But like, I'm getting so much on my newsfeed about it. They think they know them. They know I'm interested in it. I'll tell you that.
Our mutual hero Tom Brady might be an alien.
Yeah,
there's a theory there.
100%. Yeah,
like
that I would believe. 1,000%.
Yeah.
All right, great. All right, well, let's wrap it up with the Boston Sports Minute. We got a lot to get to.
It's the Garden. It's Teddy Ballgame, Yaz and Poppy and Noma. It's Brady and Larry and number 4 Bobby Orr. It's Fenway Park. It's the Boston Sports Minute. Let's go.
So, got a lot to talk about since we last recorded. Patriots, hot. Red Sox, over. But before we get to any of that, very quickly, Bill Belichick, man. This is getting weirder and weirder and weirder. Did you see the video that came out today?
I did not.
Someone leaked video of him and Jordan working on some documentary. Watch it. It's pretty messed up.
It in the way that he's like beholden to her.
Yes,
sort of. He's, okay.
Yes. He's beholden to her.
Well, yes, it's weird. It's almost like don't tell me about it. I don't want to hear it. It's like when you're.
It's at that point.
Yeah, it's like when your Uncle Frank was such a nice guy and he was always the guy, you know, giving you a hug and everything, and now he's, you know, in the basement predicting the end of the world in 2 weeks or something, and it's like, wow, Uncle Frank has lost it. Uncle Bill may have lost it a little bit.
Yeah, that's the truth, 100%. Like, I hope someone is taking him to get like a medical evaluation,
maybe,
because people get older and they get exploited,
of course,
by younger people if they start to lose their faculties. And you wonder, really, like, what is going on with this guy? Because he's had just such a radical shift in like his personality and his values from what he was 10, 20 years ago to what he is now. It's like unbelievable.
I thank God we didn't hear about the girlfriend while he was in Foxborough.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, players have primes and coaches have primes too. So that's why I say, when people say, well, obviously Brady was the one responsible for the dynasty, not Belichick. It's like, well, no, were you here? He was the coach. That was his prime.
Right.
This is clearly no longer his prime.
Right. 1,000%. It's revisionist history to minimize what Belichick did here.
Yeah.
But I will say this, like, if we're going to segue to the Patriots, like, give the Crafts a lot of credit for moving on from Belichick, because that was a tough decision.
Yeah.
They obviously blew it by hiring Mayo. That was a terrible hire. But, I mean, something needed to change in this organization, and, like, it looks like the Patriots are on the right track now. And there was two tough decisions in there. One was getting rid of Belichick, and then two was admitting they screwed up on Mayo and get rid of him after a year. And a lot of organizations wouldn't have done that. So I think give some credit to the Crafts too.
Yeah, the theme that I always come back to is just don't underestimate what ownership does for a franchise. because we in Boston know better than not one, but 3 of our franchises right around the same time changed hands, and all of them almost immediately changed fortunes.
Right.
The Red Sox were losers. We sometimes got some great players and great hitters and everything, but we were run by a back ass word, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, by the Yawkey Trust and a history of, sadly, like discrimination and things like that. And then the Henry Group comes along, and yeah, John Henry's weird as hell and everything, but all of a sudden we won 4 championships. Kraft buys the Patriots. All of a sudden we win 6 Super Bowls. And the Celtics with Grousbeck, when they came in, they only got 1, but still. No, I guess they got 2. They get the last one too. But so yeah, but you're right. Did you have an uneasy feeling when Bill Belichick left, kind of thinking, oh boy, no?
I mean, I was sad, but I thought it was the right move.
You did?
Okay, it was time to move on. It wasn't working. It was ugly. The last 5 years were ugly.
I know. It was painful to watch. It didn't look like the old Patriots. And then, so now Belichick's gone and Brady's gone. I admit there was a feeling. I really hope the Crafts know what they're doing.
Right.
But
100%.
But they seem to be, they seem to have their act together.
I mean, I think you could argue that getting rid of Mayo was actually a harder decision than getting rid of Belichick, because I think it was pretty clear Belichick's time was up and it run its course, probably went beyond its course by a few years. The Mayo thing, to make that kind of investment, to make those kind of public comments, and then after 1 year to be like, you know what, this was an epic disaster. Yeah. We were wrong. Let's take this medicine and look like fools for the good of the organization. That took a lot of guts.
I agree. And, they believe in loyalty. They believe in taking care of their people. At least they say so. And I kind of feel for Gerard Mayo. Believe me, I wanted him to go too for the fortune of the football team. But they groomed him, and then you only get 1 year, and it's too bad. He was placed into kind of a crappy situation. But man, talk about turning around the culture with Vrabel. I mean, come on, we're all in love. It's like he's some similarities to Parcells,
I think
maybe,
so.
In terms of leadership.
Closer
stuff.
to Parcells than Belichick, for sure.
For sure, yeah.
Very Parcellsian.
And do you care that Belichick was the worst press conference coach ever, and now you got Vrabel who is entertaining, fiery?
I don't care, but what I will say is that I mean those things seep into the field. They seep into the locker room. They seep into the field. I mean, Belichick, of all people, should have learned that from what he went through in Cleveland, where the off-the-field stuff absolutely took him down there. But it seemed like at the end, he forgot a lot of that. And I mean, the ability, especially in today's world, you have to be able to engage, because you have to be able to engage the media and your players. It's the same skill set, I think. And Belichick's failure to do that was a big part of his demise here.
Right.
Vrabel's great at it.
Right. When you're 16-0 and winning Super Bowls, people will quickly forget that you went up to the microphone and said, oh, well, it's all about the players today.
Right.
But with
solid impression, by the way.
Not too bad. I'm working on it. But when to give an example, like when Dan Campbell took over the Lions, he came in with so much fire and brimstone. And you remember they started losing right away, epically. Like they were like 0-7 and 1-8 or whatever they were. But he never. He appeared upset for sure, but he never broke his sort of aura of leadership. And if you can, that's important. I agree with you. You look at Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins.
Right.
He looks
exactly.
like he looks like he just got beat up and had bullies steal his school money every time.
Mike McDaniels is like the anti-Belichick, right? That's like going from one extreme to the other, where there's got to be some middle ground there. But you got to remember too, Dave. You referenced the 2007 16-0 season. That was 18 years ago. It's a different generation,
for sure.
Totally different generation, totally different expectations, and Belichick's style, they just didn't resonate with that anymore. Vrabel is much more on the mark, I think. He's still tough, but I think he's somehow tough, but also kind of a player's coach, which is just a nice balance to strike.
And it's fun as a fan.
It is
fun. You get, we, believe me, I'm going to trade anything for the Super Bowls, but now when you get a win, you look forward to seeing Vrabel get up there and talk, or even when they lose. Looking at the schedule, I don't know how many more games they're going to lose, but he's a good soundbite, Vrabel, and he seems like He seems like your rowdy older brother who you want to hang out with.
And an exciting young quarterback, too.
Oh, man.
Exciting young player that is just like a playmaker, dynamic, kind of fits with the modern NFL.
Do we need to pump the brakes on all the love for Drake May? Or
a little bit, we should. But I mean, I've always been bullish on May. If we do the football podcast too. The day even before the draft, that he was the quarterback that I wanted them to draft, and it was as much because of his composure and his mental makeup, and I think you're seeing this now as it was his physical talent. So and what we saw last year is his physical talent is actually better than even I thought it was. And yes, we have to pump the brakes on him, but that doesn't mean we can't be super excited. I mean, people are saying MVP. He's had 3 good games. Let's just take it easy.
I know.
But the guy is, I think, a franchise quarterback in the making.
Well, it's different. That it's not just a stat-friendly QB, a fantasy football QB. He can be that. But to me, what was most impressive was the last 2 weeks, he could have wilted. Yeah. In the Buffalo game, even if we hadn't pulled that out at the end, I think we would have said, man, such a shame. But man, Drake May looks like he's got the goods. He saved his best for last. Yeah. And then in the last game, I lost my composure yelling at the referees. I mean, I think a different quarterback might have gotten flustered. Every time he threw a beautiful pass, there's a phony flag on the
He's been very poised, no doubt about it. But he's going to make mistakes because that's the kind of game. He's been lucky a little the last few weeks too. He's done a couple crazy things that have worked out.
That's true.
He could easily get burned by those. That's his nature. And, I just think, hey, that's what he is. He's a playmaker. He's a home run hitter. And, the last few weeks he hit a few home runs. All right, so the Boston Sports Minute turned more into like the Boston Sports 8 minutes.
As it will.
But that's okay. There's a lot to talk about. All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up, Dave. Any final thoughts on this episode of the Modern Medicine Podcast before we ride off into the sunset?
Tremendous guests. Great info as usual. And, this Modern Medicine Podcast all about health. And the state of New England mental health is good in part because of the Patriots.
I like the bridge. There you go. Well, listen, if you're out there, find us on Facebook. We're over 2,500 followers now on Facebook with 2,000 likes. So reach out to us if you got anything you want us to talk about. We'll catch you next month with a new episode. Be healthy, be well, be safe.